speaking of stand-up, Cynthia, I didn't. When I introduced the film, I should have told you that the song that closes the film it's sung by Cynthia, and it was also co-written by Cynthia. How important in the creation of Harriet was it for you to be able to be involved in the song and close the movie with the song?
For me, it was really important just because I am a singer-songwriter as well, and it felt like it was one other way I could get really close to the story and close to her. And it felt a bit like a thank you note almost, you know what I mean? To be able to be a part of the creation of a song for Harriet, yeah.
This is a remarkable character who does not perceive limitations, and is not regulated by the things that constrict the average person. Right. You know, what was it like embodying a character like this?
At times it could be really overwhelming, you know. I tried to make sure that I was prepared physically for her, and Casey says that I got out of the way, but really I just asked there to be a safe space for Harriet to inhabit, basically, and sometimes I wasn't sure if I could go as far as I needed to. Other times I would go as far as I needed to, and it would feel really overwhelming. And then there's the most empowering thing about being able to play a person who has no limitations placed on herself, I don't believe. I don't think she ever for one moment doubted whether she could do what she could do. There was no choice, you know, and that's kind of special. Yeah. Why
do you think this is the first time that we see a film that covers the story of Harriet?
I know that there have been many attempts over the years. Even this one took a while to get made as well. But I like to think that maybe she wasn't ready and now she is. I like to think that maybe now is the best time for it. The world is ready for something like that. I feel like that right now is the perfect time to see a woman take the lead, take control, and change the world. I think it's important that we see that now.
And there's I mean, we've gone to school, we've learned about Harriet Tubman, but there are things in the film that we have never heard. You know, the fact that we knew that she was an abolitionist and a freedom fighter, but the fact that she was a spy for the Union Army, that she led a battalion of soldiers, that she led the women's suffrage, it's a pretty complex.
Yes, very much so, and it went on until she was 91, which is unbelievable, really. And for me, it was small things that I didn't, you know, that I knew, but we didn't have enough information on. And then once we were doing this film, we got to research. It's like the marriage she had between herself and John. You know she was married to a person called John, but you don't realize that their relationship was really the beginning of the story that we know. She went back for him originally. We didn't know that. And I think that to know that she was loved and gave love is change. I feel like it changes the perspective to know that she was truly human and she really had love and she felt heartbreak and through heartbreak had to figure something out again. And I think that for me that makes her even more of a superhero, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about the human aspect of it, but the superhero aspect of it, we're so used to seeing Captain Marvel and Avengers, but this character is actually the true action hero in American history.
Yeah, she is, and it's incredible, and she really was. I think it is noted somewhere, I do believe, that she was small, so she was, I think, 5 foot. Although some say 4'11", I think she was 5 foot. I'm 5'1". I just look taller because I have heels on. And she was extremely strong, physically fit. They would hire her out occasionally to help on other plantations, and it was through that she was able to save some of the money that, and you know, at the beginning where we see that they had hired a lawyer, that is also real. she saved her money to hire a lawyer, and it was because of the physicality of her, the strength
Which I
of her.
love about the film, that from the get-go, the very first scene, you get a taste of her mettle, that she's determined.
Yeah, very much so. She knew implicitly what was right and what was wrong, and that people should be free. Everyone has a right to their own freedom.
She also derived her power from her faith and her religion, and it's so inspiring to actually see. How did that help you with the character?
Well, I also have a faith. I believe in God, and I think that being able to play a woman who is unashamed of that belief and sharing that belief was really helpful for me to access my own, really, and have a deeper understanding for what that is and how that feels. I would pray every morning before I would get to set, and I would always ask to make the space safe for her to come in, and to make sure that everyone on set was safe and that we were all there for the same reason. And I think that having that connection made me understand why a person would allow faith to be the driving force behind the work that she did. And I think it served her pretty well.
To me, the crux of the film is when she's trapped on the bridge.
Yeah.
The fact that she has to make a choice.
Yeah, it's freedom or death. Yeah.
You know, can you tell us about that scene and you connecting to it?
Yeah. I mean, I felt for me that moment really is the epitome of who she was, that there was no other choice. There was no way she was going back. There was no way she was going to be to belong to someone again. It just wasn't in her cards anymore. And so the only choice was to be free or die. And that was what she was willing to do. And I think to understand someone is willing to go that distance for freedom, for the good of doing right by others, is inspiring. Yeah.
Can you tell us how did it come about you playing Harriet?
I was in The Color Purple when Deborah Martin Chase and Daniela Taplin-Lundberg, the producers of this, saw me. I think they came to a show. I didn't know they were going to be there, but they saw the show and then had asked to meet me afterwards.
Which, by the way, she won the Tony Award for Best Actress in a Musical for The Color Purple.
Thanks.
And one of the greatest performances ever.
Thank you very much. And then I met Deborah at I remember the Mandarin Oriental, and we had tea. And she started talking about this script that she had for a really long time, and finally it was going to be made. And she said, there's this character that I think you'd be really great for. It's Harriet Tubman, and I almost fell out of my seat. I can't remember a good 5 minutes after that, to be honest. But I knew that if this was the time to tell the story, I wanted to be a part of it, because I knew that this was a story that was important and needed to be told. And I knew it hadn't been told yet. And when I had heard how long they had held on to this script for, and the way in which they wanted to tell the story, the adventure, the freedom of it, and I knew that they wanted to do right by her, so they wanted to make sure that she was played with grace. I wanted to be a part of it. Yeah. And
you mentioned adventure. That's a big part of the film.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah.
And was Casey Lemons the director?
Yes.
Aware of the fact that adventure was a big part, needed to be a big part of it.
Yeah, I think so. Also because I don't think we get to see very many women of color in adventure stories in the center of it, and badass. We don't get to see that, and it just is. I think for her and for me, it was refreshing to be able to tell this story of a woman who really had a hold of her own destiny, and could do some of the things that you only get to see guys do, really. Yeah.
I don't want to butcher his name, but I love him. Paul Tazwell, who did the costumes.
Yeah.
the transition,
Yeah.
the story of the arc, I love the fact that you actually see
Yeah,
it in
through her
the
clothes,
costume.
yeah.
Is that something that emboldened you?
Oh yeah, yeah. Paul is incredible. He's a genius. You may know, he did
Won
the
the
costume.
Tony for Hamilton.
Hamilton, yeah, the small, insignificant
musical.
musical. And one of the things that he would do was to make sure that we were telling the story not just through the script and through the words and through our actions, but through the clothes that we wore, so that we could all. So everything was a journey. I loved working with him because he really had a personal conversation, dialogue with me about where we wanted to go next, and was so open to ideas. If we got into a scene and he thought, oh, we might need something different in this, then we would go with that feeling and find something different. And he was wonderful, and it's really quite special to be able to collaborate with your costume designer as well as everybody else, because it means that everyone is a part of the storytelling. And so whenever I put on her clothes, it immediately changed the way I held myself, the way I moved. Sometimes it would be just like the feel of the costume, the weight of the material in some of the pieces, like it would change how you would walk into a room, the shoes you would wear, like it was endless. The way it was another way to access her, which is strange because of clothing, and I guess we all express ourselves through the way we wear our clothes.
I don't remember seeing a film where it was symbiotic with your performance, that I was aware of, that at first you had tattered clothes and then you start wearing corsets and then
the skirts get slightly bigger and everything
then the
becomes
hats
more,
and stuff, and then your performance seems to
change as we
change it. It's phenomenal.
Yeah, it's cool. I can't take all credit because I do believe that that combination of having an incredible director, a good script, and a really wonderful costume designer kind of comes together as one, because it really helps to inform where you are. You know, when you're in a it's the idea that when she goes from wearing these tattered clothes that she's had to work in a lot in a very physical way, and then goes to wearing a corset and a dress, it's now, how do I move as a free woman? You know, and then from there you're not just moving as a free woman, you're now moving as a free woman with authority. So the dress changes again, and now it's a free woman with authority who's actually having to save people, and it continues to move in that really fluid way, which I think allowed me to access that journey.
Speaking of information, the scar on Harriet.
Yeah.
Were you involved in the choice of where it is?
Yeah.
It's always informing the movie and the character.
Yeah, because it was a big deal for her. It was documented that's how it was. That story she tells about the weight being thrown at her head is how it happened, and that's where it placed. That's where it landed. For her, she says she calls it the hole in her head. And I think we all just wanted to make sure that it wasn't overbearing, but it was there, like a constant reminder of the thing that she had been through. You know, scars, that's what scars do. They remind you of a hurt or an instance. And I think because of where it's placed, because it was so delicate, everyone had decided that we weren't going to just put we don't want it to be Harry Potter-esque, you know? Mm-hmm. We wanted it to still feel like this is a real person who's been hurt, and this is what she was left with. You know, the years of healing and what is left from that after you've healed.
On that same note, the singing, your character does spiritual singing, and it's different. I mean, you're an incredible singer. We heard you at the closing, and you've done Broadway singing, but this is a different type of singing that Harriet does. There's a rawness to it. Is singing out of necessity. Can you tell us about that transition, that difference?
So right from the get-go, Casey and I knew that whenever she would sing, we would want to make sure that it didn't sound like me. So we went on a journey to find out where her voice would be, what it would sound like, whether she was I know I'm a soprano, but we know that she wasn't a soprano. It didn't feel right for her to be that. And we wanted to make sure that it was connected not so much to the performance of music, but to the communication. Because before anything else, singing was a way in which they could communicate without being heard. So it really was necessities. And so when you put that first, when it's about, I need to say goodbye to my mother now, then it comes from a different place and it will sound different, because it's not about how well can I sing this, it's more about how loudly and will it get to her, and will she understand what I'm saying when I sing it this way.
You have an incredible cast that surrounds you.
Yeah.
Leslie Odom Jr.,
Yeah.
who was also winner
Yeah.
of Best Actor in a Musical for Hamilton. He plays Aaron Burr. What was it like working and finding yourself face to face with Aaron Burr?
Oh, it's fine. I know him very, very well. He's a very good friend. His daughter is my goddaughter. And so we did that Tony journey together. We were, arm in arm the whole entire time. And just before this, we had been on set doing another film where he was #1. And so I feel like along the way, or in my journey throughout my life, I'm going to end up bumping into him a lot on set, which is fine by me. He's all right.
And then working with Janelle Monáe in that phenomenal role.
She's just gorgeous inside and out, super caring. And before we got on set, we were already talking to each other, texting, calling, just finding out where we were, how I was, how she was. And I was really glad to be able to be in the same space as her. She's just a lovely, wonderful, hardworking person. Yeah.
And then Jennifer Nettles,
Yes.
who we know her
Yeah.
as the superstar of Sugarland,
Yeah.
the group, and this is her first starring role.
Yeah, which she lobbied for. Yeah.
And
She wrote a letter and said, I want to be able to bring the people who support me and my fans to this story as well.
why did she think it was important to get her fans to come?
Because I think she thought this story, the story of Harriet, was important. And I think that she knows the access that she has to certain people that we might not have access to. And I think for her, the most important thing, like for everyone on that set, telling their story was paramount. Telling Harriet's story is really paramount. Yeah.
Big or Long,
Yeah.
that is a complicated,
Yes.
sick relationship.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about developing that relationship and working on that?
Well, I think it was the exploration of the different kind of relationships that enslaved people or people who were not enslaved had, because it wasn't cut and dry. In Maryland, where there were people who were free living next to people who weren't, married to people who were free who weren't, and the morality is complicated, and that's what human beings are. I think in his defense, he's trying to do everything he can to survive, because that's all he knows. And in her defense, that's what she's doing. She's trying to survive and become free, And I think it's warped and twisted, but that is the nature of some relationships, really. Yeah.
One of the most spectacular scenes in the movie is the crossing into freedom, into Maryland, and then the sky, it becomes, there are rainbows and all these beautiful colors. Can you tell us about filming that moment?
Yes, well, that was a very strange day, because actually the entire day before that point was gray and rainy and cold, and there was no sunshine anywhere. And I think I had 5 different scene changes and costume changes before that. And Casey was like, I really want to get this moment, please. I know it's going to be tough to get ready for it, but I think we can get this moment. And everyone was like, Casey, you're crazy. If the sun is not out, we're not going to get the thing that you want, because look at the day is gray and rainy, it's cold. But she was like adamant. So we got ready, and I'm furious at this point, because I'm like, there's nothing left to do. We're not going to get the scene anymore. And I walk up the hill, that she says, action. I run the scene and jump over, and no word of a lie, what you saw on the screen is what happened. Skies parted, sun comes out, it's like a orangey red, then there's blues everywhere, and then to my, which you don't see, to my right-hand side is a double rainbow. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. And I sound like I'm like making this up, but this is what happened. It's what happened. And I think she yells cut, I turn around and everyone is in tears. And I think it was the first time I was like, because I knew it in my heart that we weren't doing it on our own. But I think it was the first time I was like, oh yeah, okay, got you. Got it, good, yeah.
There's a lot of scenes that take place in the woods, and it seemed cold and grueling.
Seemed?
Was it? Well, that's what I wanted to ask. Was it? How difficult was it?
It was difficult. So we shot this September through to December, in the woods at night by the water. It was freezing. It was freezing, and I was in a corset the whole time, like the entire time. So it was tough. But the thing we used to there was this phrase that was going around, and it was HTH, Harriet Tubman Hard. Yeah. If it wasn't Harriet Tubman Hard, we were fine. We could get it done. Yeah, we would never be suffering as much as she was. So we were good.
And there must have been a sense of responsibility in you.
Yeah.
The fact that you're playing Harriet Tubman, was that weighing you down?
Not weighing me down. I think it was urging me on. I think I was willing to do whatever was necessary in order to tell her story as truthfully and fully as I possibly could. So if that meant getting in the water without a wetsuit on and just having the dress on, that was what I was going to do. If it meant running through the woods however many times I needed to, that was what I was going to do. If it meant 18-hour days and getting up the next day with only 3 hours of sleep, that was what I was going to do. Like, there was no measure that I wasn't willing to go to. Because I just was like, this just has to be told.
I also think about not just the young African-American women that are seeing this, but all the young women that are seeing this story, how important it is for them to see this.
Very. And I always feel like the wonderful thing about this is that it's a small young woman that you see who is underestimated consistently, but despite all that, achieves the most incredible things, like changes the actual world. And I, for me, want women to come away from this understanding that whenever they feel like they may be the smallest, most unimportant thing in the room, let that be someone else's perception of you and not your own. That you should know that you have the ability to change the world. Yeah.
And Harriet did change the world.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, I couldn't stop thinking, watching the film, and the timing of it is that there was so much unrest during the period of Harriet's time, and she was on the verge of civil war, and how it speaks to today. You know, how do you feel about the timing of the film?
I think it's perfect. I think it serves as a reminder that if we don't do what we're supposed to do, we could end up right back where we were, and that's just not an option. So we have work to do. That's how I feel about it, really. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Cynthia, for being here.
Thank you.
You're amazing.
Thank you.